The second is probably the biggest one, and I want to go with you guys here because you mentioned it last week, pretty much almost like a foreshadowing. The judge in the case that they had against Al Heyman put out a summary judgment against Golden Boy. And one of the things that they cited was things that happened to Golden Boy recently. The deal with ESPN, which ended the argument that Al Heyman was freezing out the networks for competition. And the two fights that he mentioned obviously were Canelo Khan and Canelo Chavez Jr. Now, Joe, like I said, you're our legal mind here, you and Francis. Taking those factors aside, would if those things were thrown out, would the judge still be in the right to file the summary judgment?
Yeah, I think so. Because when we talked last week, I told you I had read what was filed, and I thought Golden Boy's case was weak. When Heyman filed their motion for summary judgment back in November, and the judge gave Golden Boy time to file a written response. And in a motion for summary judgment, that's basically saying there's no reason to go to trial, there's no issues of material fact, and as a matter of law, I'm entitled to win. So Heyman's motion basically said, our contract says, there's two provisions that were at issue. That the contract says that as the manager, that the boxer cannot enter into any boxing-related contracts without the express written permission from Al Heyman. And then the second part of the contract said that Al Heyman, or Heyman Enterprises, whatever the company is, picks the promoter. So Golden Boy was arguing those two provisions stop Golden Boy from making fights. But the problem Golden Boy had is when they didn't have any examples. They couldn't cite to one example where they offered Al Heyman fighter a fight, and then it got turned down. The judge, when they gave Golden Boy time to file a written response, the idea was, let me see the facts that you are going to present at trial, and I'll determine whether we need to proceed to trial or not. And in their response, it was full of just general conclusions without any specific examples. And now that ruling that came down, it was interesting, because the cases that I deal with, the judges don't get into that. That was much more written like almost like a online article than a court ruling. There was much more details in there that were outside of what was filed in the court. That's normally not the way judges write opinions. But I thought it was very interesting because the judge brought up that took note. The judge put in there, the court can't help but take notice that Canelo Alvarez has agreed to a fight with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in May. That's a clear example that Al Heyman fighters will agree to work with Golden Boy. And then Al Heyman's people had, I think, 6 affidavits from different boxers that said, I've never once been told I can't do a fight with a certain promoter, and I've never received an offer from Golden Boy to have a fight. So when Heyman's got examples and boxers verifying under oath that he never turned down a fight because of the promoter, and then when Golden Boy doesn't have any examples to support their argument, and when everyone knows Canelo and Amir Khan, that was one of the biggest fights of last year, that sure cut against Golden Boy's arguments there. So after I had read everything last week when we talked, I thought their case was weak, and the judge obviously did too, because he ruled for summary judgment on the federal court issues, the federal claims for antitrust violations, and then what the judge did was he dismissed the state court claims under California law. What the court did was said, I already ruled on the federal issues, I'm going to decline to exercise the federal jurisdiction over the remaining claims, because the federal judge can either rule on the state court issues, or once the federal issues are resolved, he can just send it back to the state court. And that's basically what the judge said here. He said, I'm not going to rule on the state law claims. I'm going to dismiss those without prejudice. But based on the ruling that he made, if Golden Boy, they get 1 year to file it in state court, even if they refile it within the 1 year, based on the ruling, the way the federal court judge ruled, Golden Boy would really have a uphill battle, and it just doesn't seem like their case that they have now. Because you got to remember, they filed that case in April 2015, which is right after the PBC was announced and right after they put on that first card. And nobody really knew exactly how it was going to play out. All we really knew was that Haymon had got these TV deals and got some venue deals. And so when Golden Boy files their lawsuit, they don't know how it's going to play out. They just hear that there's these exclusive TV deals, and Golden Boy's worried that they can't get on. They're not going to be able to get on TV. But the landscape has changed since they filed the case. Now that some of those exclusive contracts are gone, Golden Boy signed a multi-fight deal with ESPN earlier this year. I know Golden Boy was arguing that, well, they locked up some of the venues, but the judge pointed out there's no shortage of venues in the United States. Maybe they have exclusive deals with a few venues, but there's hundreds of venues Golden Boy can use, and there's what seems to be an infinite supply of television channels that Golden Boy can try to get their fights on. So those claims just weren't going to go anywhere. There are opportunities to make fights with boxers managed by Al Haymon. So I think from that point